Good afternoon all. Welcome to this meeting of the Swansea Bay City Region Joint Scrutiny Committee. My name is Cleona May. I'm the clerk to the meeting this afternoon. The first item on the agenda is to appoint a chair for the remainder of the municipal year. Could I have a proposal?
I'd propose Rob James. Yvonne?
Thank you, Councillor. Is that seconded?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you. And is that agreed by the committee?
Yeah.
Thank you, members. The second item is to appoint a vice chair for the remainder of the municipal year. Could I have a proposal?
I propose Tim Bowen.
Thank you, Councillor Dacey. And is that seconded?
Yeah, I'll
Happy to
second
second.
Thank you, Councillor Curtis. And is that agreed by members? Thank you all. I'll now hand over to Councillor James as chair of the meeting.
Thank you very much. Welcome all to the meeting. Our first meeting of this term for the Swansea Bay City Joint Scrutiny Committee. So firstly, can I ask members to ensure that the phones are switched off or silent for the duration of the meeting? If you have any questions, please raise your electronic hand. If you're attending virtually, or please indicate to members, officers of Neath Talbot Council if you're in the chamber should you wish to ask a question. Please only use the chat function to indicate if you wish to speak or if you're experiencing technical issues. Your microphone should be switched to mute unless you're speaking, and please also note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available for repeat viewing on the website following the meeting. So that's that. Can all officers in attendance please introduce themselves? Starting with Jonathan Burns.
Thank you, Chair. Jonathan Burns, Portfolio Director for the Swansea Bay City deal.
Chris Moore. Okay, Richard Arnold.
Sorry, I think Chris sends his apologies for the meeting. My name's Richard Arnold. I'm the Finance Manager for the Swansea Bay City deal.
Thank you very much. Philip Ryder.
Right. Chair, Phil Ryder, Portfolio Manager for the Swansea Bay City deal.
Okay, and that was those in the chambers. Mike?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Michael Shaw, Principal Solicitor and Deputy Monitoring Officer. Thank you, sir.
And the following officers.
Hi all, Cleona May again, Scrutiny Officer and clerk to the meeting.
Alison Thomas, Scrutiny Officer for Neath Talbot Council.
And Charlotte Davis, the Senior Scrutiny Officer.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much. See, this is the first meeting. We may as well all introduce ourselves. So my name is Councillor Rob James. I am the Leader of the Opposition in Carmarthenshire Council, as well as a member for Lledy in Llanelli Town Centre. James Morgan, Councillor James Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As you just alluded to, Councillor Giles Morgan, represent the Swiss Valley ward on Carmarthenshire County Council.
Okay, Councillor Hawley.
Councillor Chris Hawley, Leader of the Opposition on Swansea City Council.
Councillor Jan Curtis.
Hi, Councillor Jan Curtis for the City and County of Swansea, covering Penrell and Gravesend ward.
Councillor Brian Hall.
Councillor Brian Hall, Carmarthenshire County Council. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tim Bowen.
Yeah, I'm Councillor Tim Bowen. Just been elected Vice Chair, and I'd like to thank you all. Councillor for Neath Talbot and covering Cymla and Pelena ward.
Diolch yn fawr. Councillor Mike Harvey.
Yeah, Councillor Mike Harvey, a councillor for Coed North in Skewin. I would say delighted to be back on the Scrutiny Committee and see some new faces. Thank you.
I'm sure you are, Mike. Councillor Russell Sparks.
Good afternoon, Councillor Russell Sparks. I'm for Command Town West and Carmarthenshire County Council, and I'm newly elected, so this is all new to me. I'm here to learn.
Thank you very much. And is there Councillor Dacey I also see in the chamber?
Yeah, Councillor Andrew Dacey, Aberlawn and Baglamores, and obviously Neath Talbot Council. I'm new to it too. Welcome. I hope I can be well welcome, and I will partake once I know what's going on more.
Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr pawb. Croeso to all of you. Right, so that's us with the introductions. Chair's announcements. I don't have any announcements today. Declarations of interest is all, interested to declare anything. Is there anything that wish to be declared right now? No, I can't see anything. Okay, so Swansea Bay City Deal quarterly reports / highlight reports. So this is pages 13 to 102. Can I ask Jonathan Burns?
Chair, you've just out item 4, terms of reference.
Apologies. Thank you, Councillor Curtis. Yeah, terms of reference, item number 4. So this is page 15 to 12 for members to receive the terms of reference for the Swansea Bay City Region Joint Scrutiny Committee. That's a few words for you. Okay. Councillor Hawley, I see you want to raise a point, but Jonathan, do you want to quickly just take us through the terms of reference?
Would it assist, sir, if I were to do that?
Oh, you're taking it, you, Mike? Okay, there we are, Mike.
Thank you. Yes, good afternoon, members. Item number 4 on the report is in relation to the terms of reference. For those members who sat on the previous scrutiny committee, they would be very familiar with the terms of reference and particularly the Covert requirement. That had been 8 under the previous constitution, but that has now been reduced to 6. I trust that will be welcome to members, because certainly in a previous life we did experience some difficulties with quorum numbers. As a consequence, those quorum numbers have been accepted and those now pass into your terms of reference. If you have any questions, I would be happy to assist, but I think, sir, that probably is it.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And can I also thank you and the other officers that have been involved with getting this quorum matters sorted. It did take quite a bit of time. It was quite frustrating for us as members at the time. And it's good to see that we're starting with a fresh slate now with the new quorum of 6. So thank you very much for your work that you did as part of that.
Thank you, sir.
Could you also talk about, for the new members as well, the element in which we scrutinise certain projects and it's become kind of a protocol that we focus on the regional projects rather than the 6, and the reason for that, if you could?
Yes, in fact, the terms of reference are actually embedded within the report. I think they occur at pages 11 and 12, which contain the reference to the procedure and those things applying to the scrutiny committee. So they are actually set out.
Okay, and in terms of, as I say, it was normally expected that we only scrutinise the regional elements. Is there flexibility within that?
Yeah, the terms of reference provide for scrutiny in respect of the regional projects. If there are individual projects, ordinarily they would fall to be considered by the respective authorities. But if something does arise, well, that can be considered as a standalone matter. But ordinarily, the terms of reference will require the regional projects are scrutinised by this body and individuals by their respective councils.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, Councillor Hawley, I understand you have a question on this matter.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Thank you very much. I would argue that many of the regional projects have a direct impact on the projects within the individual authorities, and as such, surely it is an overriding concern of this scrutiny joint scrutiny committee to actually, if necessary, and if they deem necessary, because as a committee it would be necessary for us to look at individual projects, be it in Port Talbot, be it in Pembroke, be it in Swansea or Carmarthen, with that view that they all have an input into the region, and as such, then surely that gives us an overriding view of looking at these projects. Going through the terms of reference, it says on 2.1, what is it, 2.1, 212 to develop a forward work.
So this is page 11 for everyone.
Sorry, I do apologise. 212, develop a forward work reflecting the functions under 211. Well, you know, that's the function of the Swansea Bay Regional City Deal specifically. You know, so effectively it does give the approval for us to look at whatever is worked under the city deal within the region. I admit the fact that on a study case we don't need to go down to the nuts and bolts of the various projects, but the impact those projects have on the region could be very, very profound. You know, I'll give you an example. The power station in Pembroke could have a major effect on how that development of power, development of a generating hub could have the effect of creating employment where people living in Carmarthen or even Swansea or even Talbot could actually work in an element where this region needs to have a view of those particular projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holly. Councillor Sparks.
Just to follow on from what Chris has said, and on the same page 2.1.4 it says to monitor any city deal regional projects against its programme plan. So there is authority in the terms of reference to look at individual projects, isn't there? Just by that by that statement, and short, you know, isn't what we're looking to do here working regionally to yes work alongside and with the relevant constituent authorities for their individual projects too? Isn't it all combined? Am I?
Okay, can I bring in Mike Shaw and then Phil Ryder?
Yes, and thank you, Councillor Holly and Councillor Sparks. Right. Forgive me. Right. Sorry, if you can hear me now. Yeah. Yes, thank you, Councillor Holly. Thank you, Councillor Sparks. There will be overlap in the projects, and I think that will be built into the terms of reference. So any items that you do have an interest in scrutinising, if we can identify those, and those can be looked at, of course. If there are any discrepancies, of course, I'll bring those to your attention.
So for clarity, are the members incorrect saying that there is flexibility to look at other projects?
There is, of course, flexibility, sir, yes.
Okay. Phil.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add to what Mike said, I think obviously the terms of reference allow for scrutiny of the joint committee elements, which obviously holistically is the 9 programmes and projects. I think from our perspective, to try and keep things as clean and clear as possible, as Mike said, it's if there's anything additional to what's been seen by joint committee, then that's where we would have to obviously request it separately. But anything obviously that does go to joint committee relating to the individual 9 programmes and projects is obviously available for the committee and for scrutiny. And the reason I raised my hand initially was just a query for Mike, really. Mike, I know the Chorusy numbers has been reduced from 8 to 6, but because the terms of reference in the pack is still the previous one, can I just confirm that there's still a need for 1 councillor from each authority to be Cora, just so we've got clarity on that?
Yes, if you're okay with me answering that, Mr. Chair. Yes, you're right, Phil. It will be 1 member from each of the authorities, Cora at number of 6.
Lovely, thanks.
Okay, sir, thank you.
That's fine. Do I have any other questions in regards to the terms of reference? I can't see any indications. Can I have a proposal to accept this report then? Councillor Jan Curtis, a seconder. Councillor Chris Hawley, Pope and Happis, all in favour? Yeah. Anyone against? Any abstentions? I can't see anything, so that seems that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, agenda item 5, PIMP. So this is the Swansea Bay City Deal quarterly monitoring and highlights report. So apologies, this is the one I jumped to last time. Can I bring in Jonathan Byrne at this stage?
Thanks, Chair. There's lots of information in the pack. So quarterly full report as of March 2022. There's a February, March and May highlight reports, and also supporting documents for agenda number 5. So there is a lot of information. There's probably best part of 90 pages. I'm going to go through them in turn and just make sure I highlight the key things I'd like to share with you. Particularly pointing out, first of all, the dashboard, which is page 29 to 38. So if we start with that report. This is a mock-up dashboard, so this is the first time this committee's ever seen it. We've shared it with Joint Committee just a couple of weeks ago. They liked it in terms of a summary report, effectively an exec summary of what's happening. So I'm going to go through each of those sections in turn. And if anybody has any questions, I'll pause after the dashboard and then continue then through the more detail on the quarterly monitoring, and Rich Arnold can come in and talk about the financials. So the financials will be at the end of what I do. So in terms of what we call the red, amber, green status, the RAG status on page 30, that remains largely unchanged from Q3 21-22, last financial year. The one I'd like to highlight is Pembroke Marine. It's highlighted in red, largely around the financial risks. So they're in the process now of mitigating. The chances are within the next week or so, that will be reduced to amber. So that's within this quarter. The risk is associated with project financials from business case development to procurement. So if you think of Pembroke Marine, that was approved even before I was in post, so you're talking of early 2020. The cost associated with it, and this is a common theme that I'll cover later in the report, the construction costs and resource of materials, obviously they're higher than what they were when they submitted the business case. So what Port of Milford Haven and various other partners down there have done, they've mitigated by securing funding from WEFO. That is nearing its conclusion. That's why we can't formally report on it yet to confirm how much. And also they're looking at the slipway, which is part of the project, and the design of that. So it works out that it would be less costly to deliver the same thing with no impact on the deliverables. So that's why it's red currently. With the mitigations in place that I just highlighted, we hope that to be amber by the next time we report. The next one then is around the delivery timeline. And one of the councillors rightly said, there is monitoring of timeline. So you do have access to the information on section 2, but I'd also refer to section 11 as part of this, which is the procurement pipeline. Those two things work in tandem. So adjustments have been made towards the end of the last financial year. Now projects and programs have realistic schedules in place following business case approval, recruitment of staff, and we're still going through that process, and the procurement process is involved. So what we now have in front of you from March 2022 is a realistic time frame of program delivery. And that remained largely unchanged from Q3 to Q4. And again, you will have that update the next time you meet to see if there's any movement on that. In terms of portfolio risks and issues, so this covers sections 3, 4 and 5 in the report. There are 4 portfolio red risks. So private sector funding is the first one, construction costs, 10-15 flood risk maps, and slippage in delivery. Those are the 4 red risks. Even with our mitigations in place, the uncertainty around them remain those in a red category. Construction costs and available resources is so critical for us now. We're making sure that we conduct a construction impact assessment, and again, you have that in your pack. We're going to conduct that monthly. We work quarterly, so it's similar to the COVID impact assessment, where we're trying to identify risks and issues and mitigations as early as possible and report them through our governance channels. So the reality is things cost more than what we probably planned. Inflation is higher than what anybody would have envisaged a year or two ago, or if not longer. So we have to make sure that we deal with those as early as we can. In terms of issues, there are 15 key issues identified. These key ones for us is our funding agreements and getting those in place so that money can flow. The logistics of governance paperwork, construction costs. Even though construction costs is a risk, In some instances, like Pembroke Dock Marine, it's an issue, it's happening now. And the other one then is measuring gross value added at a project and program level. One of the key deliverables that we've had identified in our heads of terms, and we're working with governments to identify how they expect to see that being monitored. So that is currently in discussion with both UK and Welsh government. The sub-part to that is the COVID impact assessment. So the COVID red risks continue to be reduced as project and programs move into delivery. This will be continued to be monitored in the short to medium term, just as a precaution against future impacts of COVID or potential further lockdowns or whatever might happen. And that one of the reasons why it reduced was waterfront, being Swansea City Centre project. The 3 red risks that they had around targets, procurement and project costs have now been reduced to amber. So again, there's some positivity around that oversight of risks. The next section is benefits register. As I said to colleagues before, this is where it's the proof in the pudding. It's what do we get as a consequence of investment. So we're now starting to see benefits realisation come through, and Phil Ryder on the call is overseeing that process. So the key notes really on that slide is the investment is now at 13% of the total required, and almost 500 jobs have been, or over 500 jobs have been created. That includes construction jobs. So it's a positive thing. There are other benefits that are being measured, but at a portfolio level, those are the key ones I wanted to highlight. The financial summary will be covered by Richard Arnold at the end of the session. Change management, there's nothing really to add. The change request from the matrix, which was part of the Swansea waterfront, was processed towards the end of last calendar year. There are others in the pipeline, but they haven't come through to a reporting mechanism just yet. So expect further change requests to come through, or visibility of them. In terms of assurance, so the portfolio has an assurance gateway review every year. We are due our next one this month. We had a green amber assessment rating, what they call a delivery confidence assessment. Green amber at a portfolio level, we've been told is extremely healthy in terms of position. This is about there are no blockages stopping things from progressing. We had recommendations in place. We've now completed 3 of the 4 recommendations from last year, and the 4th being imminent, which is a more of a small thing that we have to just get through, partly around terms of reference and updating those. And there's one associated with audit, which is about how they are signing up to the contributions of 50k per year, but the money's flowing, it's happening, it's just a formality. So in terms of audit and assurance, we're in a healthy position. The only thing I guess to add to that is in terms of assurance required at a project level, you have in the pack that there's information on all the different assurances coming up for review this financial year. It's how much assurance is required at a sub-business case level. So again, we'll dialogue with Welsh and UK government to bottom that out to make sure that it's appropriate, robust, fit for purpose, etc. So to give a kind of magnitude of that, we are envisaging 30 procurements between now and the end of 2026. And because we're aligned to Green Book, there could be a requirement to do 30 assurances aligned to those procurements. So that's what we're working with Welsh and UK government on is making sure that that's robust and proportionate. If I move now, Chair, if I pause there, Chair, for just a moment, because that's a lot of information to digest across probably about 11 different areas. So before I go into the quarterly monitoring, are there any questions?
Yeah, okay. Okay, firstly, on part 2, I'll bring in Councillor Morgan in a second. On part 2, can you just run through the acronyms for the new members, please?
Let me just scroll down to it. So this is of the
portfolio delivery timeline.
Which acronym? Sorry, Chair.
So you got PDM, which we know is part of.
So yeah. So let me just bring that up on my screen. I've got a different screen here. So Swansea Waterfront is what it is. Eregan is what it is. Pentra Owl, that's the Wellbeing Centre down in Delta Lakes and Connectley. HAPS is Homes as Power Stations, led by Neath Talbot, but regional delivery. PDM's Pembroke Marine down in Milford Haven. Low carbon, the full title for that is Support and Innovation Low Carbon Growth. That's led by Neath Talbot. Digital is Digital Infrastructure. Campuses is the project led by Swansea University, based around medtech and sports tech. And then Skills is a Skills and Talent Program.
And for such as Pembroke Dock Marine, you've got PDI, Meta, PTCZ, MEECE.
Okay, so I'll run through those ones. So the first one, PDI, is Pembroke Dock Infrastructure. The second one is Pembroke Demonstration Zone, that's PDZ. Meta is Marine Energy Testing Area. And MEECE is Marine Energy Engineering Centre of Excellence. So they are a bit of a mouthful, but Chair, what we could do, might be worth circulating some notes and summaries of all of those different elements of the projects in full form.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that'd be good.
Is there anything else in there, Chair, that?
I'll bring in Councillor Morgan first.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Jonathan. Nice to see you, and thanks for the dashboard. Obviously, page 33 was of great interest to me as somebody who looks at the GVA and the jobs and has continually asked about that over the years. But can I just ask quickly, in terms of the risks and the risk detail, the Scrutiny Committee will still be getting the full risks at least once a year. I think we requested that some years ago. So if I can just seek clarification on that. And then following on from that, obviously we're in year 5 now, and 2026 you've talked about is the year where lots of the construction is going to finish and things are going to start taking off. Would that be a good summary? Because we're at 5% of the jobs at the minute, if you're taking 9,000 as the figure from the website and what we've been told over the years. And I'm just going to query on homes as power stations. We had a pre-scrutiny meeting now. Is that completed? Because there's no jobs being created with that at all, and it's been, you know, we were supposed to go and see how things were working. So I'm just surprised to see on page 33 that, you know, homes as power stations has got a jobs target of I read that of about 1,700, but nothing's been created as such yet. If you're able to confirm that, thank you.
Okay, a few things there, Councillor. So page 57 is the full risk register. That's got reference to all the red, amber and green risks with the details for all of them. So you will have that as a standard report. We will only, or I will only highlight the red risks associated with them. I might even dip into the amber rising because sometimes there's potential for some to go from amber to red. So there's that. The second thing then, in terms of homes as power stations, it is not complete. It's still in its early stages. So it was approved probably around this time last year. The project manager has been recruited, Una. She is working on the distribution of funds for the 10,300 homes, either the new builds or retrofits, to have things fitted to them and tested and monitored. So there's all of that. There's procurement going on for the monitoring of that technology and the systems and wherever else that goes into the homes. Once that money has gone through the distribution funds, and Rich might be able to help me on this, but I think there's 3 distributions of the funds, I believe. I think that was the last thing that they talked about. That would run you up to about year 5 of the project being delivered. And then as a consequence of that, there would be a blueprint of what works, so that then that can be used as a kind of rollout for wider innovation technology in homes, utilising the information that they've monitored. And in parallel with all of that happening, a supply chain fund, which is yet to be allocated, they haven't distributed any of that fund, that will help support supply chains around the renewable technology sector, energy in the homes, etc. So there's lots of activity planned. Very little of it is yet out there in the public domain, hence why the jobs haven't been created yet, but they will very soon. This year they are allocating funds. So the benefits realization for that one in particular, but likewise with all of them, run up to 2033. So sometimes jobs created, inward investment might be a little bit further down the line.
But I mean, I think it's fair to say the next 5 years of the Scrutiny Committee, we should see those figures rising sharply.
I hope so. Yes, that's the plan.
So you'd agree with me then that, you know, we're at 5% now roughly. So when would you expect takeoff from 2026? In terms of jobs, you know, actual jobs going from 5% to like 10%, 15%.
Yeah, Phil, you've modelled that with all the projects. So have you got? I don't know if you've got the numbers to hand.
If you give me 2 seconds, I can pull that up, John. 2 secs.
So what we have, Councillor, is modelled, or basically taken the information from all the projects and what their plans are, and accumulated that into a benefits realisation register, and then we report against the targets that they have. And what you'll see in the dashboard is reporting against what people plan to do and what they've actually achieved. So from a quarterly dashboard, that's what you'll start seeing coming through.
And in terms of the figures, you know, on your website, you know, the 1.3 billion and such, and 9,000 jobs, are we still at that? I seem to recall something went up. So at one stage, did the jobs go up to 10,000 and then come down? Or
they fluctuate because naturally, by virtue of what we are being a broad portfolio, lots of different initiatives within 9 headline business cases. But the jobs, I think, were around 9,700, and that's last count. Investment, Rich, is about 1.24 billion, 1.23 billion, yeah, around that. And with gross value added, even though it says 1.8 billion, our figure in the portfolio business case is around 2.4 billion for gross value added as a modelled economic assessment.
John, just on the jobs, Chair, I've got a graph that I can put on screen, but it's not bilingual. Are you content that I put that up?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
I apologise, Chair. I don't want to take the committee off.
No, that's fine.
No,
so it's just easier if I show the graph because I haven't actually totaled the numbers. But as you can see there, that's what the annualization that we've worked with the programs and projects is currently looking like. This is split over the 3 themes with a small element there for a couple of additional delivery jobs which weren't included within the original target. So if I just ignore those for the time being, because they're primarily construction jobs that weren't included within the business cases. But we're obviously in year 22-23, which is here. So what we're saying is that by the end of this year, we should see in the region of 493, in the region of about 11 to 1,200 jobs, and then that will steadily increase then across the life of the portfolio. We're looking at around 1,800 by the end of next year, and what's that? 611. Around 2,500 by the end of the year after. So you know, I can present this in a more formal way next time round. It should be part of the quarterly monitoring anyway. So if it hasn't come in as part of this one, then we can definitely ensure that's there. But that's what we're looking at as the current model, if you like, and the last year there being financial year 32-33 as the end of the portfolio.
Okay, thanks for that, Phil. Can you liaise with Neath with officers to distribute that to all members?
Well, can I request? I mean, I think that
carry on.
It's very handy to have as part of the dashboard and set against.
Yeah,
it might well have been asked. It might well have been asked for by the big committee themselves, but I think it'd be handy, you know, including there must probably another graph for GVA as well, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got there is one for GVA as well. We'll come onto the dashboard in a bit more detail later on, but the dashboard is primarily just an overview, but that is part of the main quarterly monitoring. So it is definitely part of the quarterly monitoring that will be seen going forward.
Okay, because we've got the minute. So we've got that graph. So you're just setting it against the totals at the minute. Whereas the breakdown on a yearly projections, I think is quite handy. So I don't know what members feel. I mean, I'd certainly like to see it.
Yeah, no problem.
Councillor, you will have, let me just reassure everyone on the call, you will have those for the first quarter that Phil is pulling together. It's just that what we had to do was benchmark them in the last financial year, which is what you've got in front of you there. That's effectively last financial year, Q4. But going forward, that's what we want to do, is measure against target and breaking it down into the annual targets as well. It will be lumpy, it will move, but at least it shows the direction of travel that we're going in.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks, Philip.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Holly.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you, Phil, for that information. A couple of questions. Number one, who compiles the risk register? Is it done internally or externally?
So I'll answer that. It's done by the PMO through consultation. We share it with our governance board. We share it with audit. We several audits. We share it with assurance. We share it with the government. So we get feedback from many quarters. It is reviewed probably within an inch of its life. And we have, as it happens in the last audit, Phil, we did have a recommendation in terms of what we call, I think it was a residual score. I think they fed back on, and we amended that and made it more robust, if you like, Councillor. So it's compiled by the PMO, shared with everyone, but we consult and gather information. And likewise from this committee, if anybody has direct feedback on something, whether it's process or reporting or the content, we gratefully receive that feedback as well.
Okay, the other question is about the benefits register. I think that's quite interesting, actually, because the benefits realization part of it, the actual spend and the jobs created, 157 spent, 490 jobs. It would be nice if we knew where those jobs were as well. Okay.
Yeah, Phil, we can incorporate that into the dashboard report, I think, quite comfortably.
Yeah, we can. Just to add to that, John, it is already in the realization summary. So the dashboard should include that. It's at a headline program and project level. If I just quickly find what page I'm referring to, and then obviously if there's anything additional, we can obviously look at amending it for the future. So the table on page 6, where it page 33, column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The jobs created there does break down which of the 9 projects those jobs are created in so far. So we can obviously look at giving more detail on that, but it does give you the headline programs and projects.
Right. Okay. Thank you. The only other question I was going to ask is about the procurement pipeline. Quite a busy slide, one which obviously takes a bit of working out. Can I ask? There's a question about this procurement. One of the prospects, obviously, doing with the city deal was the fact that the Welsh pound is spent as much as we can in Wales anyway. On this procurement, obviously in Swansea we've done, meet the buyer or meet the employer, that type of thing. Have we done that in the region? And if we have done it in the region, can we have assurances that the size of the size of the jobs and the size of the contracts are such that it doesn't exclude local businesses?
I think both myself and Phil are probably going to jump at that response, but Phil, add anything that I've missed. So the procurement pipeline that you see, the visual diagram, the dashboard, there is an accompanying paper which provides a lot more detail. But as you said, Councillor, trying to get it all compressed into one neat diagram is complicated. It's very cluttered. So that's why we provide the detail later on the report for the detail of the procurement. In terms of meet the buyer event, yes, absolutely. Every single project that we've had going through procurement has a meet the buyer event. Until recently, they've been digital, but now we're starting to get those physical as well. So Pentre Howell did one down in Park of Scarlets and had best part of over 100 businesses, local businesses, attend that. I know that Trinity did one recently for the Matrix. I think that was digital, but again, between I think it was the Kingsway, Matrix, and Pentre Howell, they had over 200 local businesses attend and look at both from a build and from an operational perspective, look at opportunities for procuring services as subcontractors or wherever it might be. And what we try to report, councillor, and we've done this for Swansea, is how much of that was SA postcoded areas, as in businesses, how many local businesses benefited from it, etc. And we try and report as much of that as we can, along with the community benefits associated with lots of the procurements as well. And we ensure that we try and push that out as a comms as well.
Yeah.
But Phil, do you want to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, John, just to make it real. You're absolutely right. We do track those figures. Unfortunately, it's not something that any of the projects are technically contractually obliged to do. So we are obviously using best endeavours. But as John said, in relation to the arena, 33% of the companies that worked on the arena were from SA postcodes. And then in relation to Eregin, which was the only two projects that were fully delivered at the last check, if you like, a couple of months back, there was 19 Welsh contractors involved in the construction. So there's a little bit of I suppose disparity in how we receive the information, but we are checking those figures and ensuring that we're maximising the Welsh pound as much as physically possible.
And just to add to that, there's the Bay Technology Centre in Port Talbot, and we're in the process, Phil, aren't we, of getting those numbers?
Getting those figures, yeah.
Thank you very much.
If I can follow on from that point, one of the feedbacks I'm hearing from, if you see the big contractors who are taking on these contracts now, I don't think there's a single Welsh one. Kia, then you've got the French company taking two of the recent ones. So a lot of the profit, the top slicing, is going out to the region. So we're losing money straight away in regards to that. The profiting is going outside of Wales. And I've been arguing that support should be given to large construction companies, Welsh construction companies, to do a joint bid for some of these works. And it still doesn't seem to be happening. Is there a reason for that? I know there's a question of a liability and a question of a delivery, but if we're not able to control how much kind of Welsh jobs are given as part of these, why aren't we providing additional support for joint bidding processes? Phil?
I think the primary reason for that, Chair, is that obviously we've devised procurement principles which seek to ensure that we retain as much as physically possible for local contractors. But primarily because of the procurement regulations and rules that need to be adhered to, the tier 1 procurement, as you describe, is primarily procured through existing frameworks. And if you look, for example, at the South West Rail's regional contractors framework, which a lot of the infrastructure because of the size and scale of it is being procured through, then these are the contractors in those lots. The way the frameworks are set up is that they're set up into financial lots, and the individual contractors have to bid for which lots they wish to try to win work on. So the Welsh contractors, and I'm speaking from historical knowledge because I did work in the private sector prior to working in the public sector, they do have to choose which lots they want to bid on in order to win work, and primarily, unfortunately, on the jobs of this scale, they aren't bidding for those lots in the conception of the frameworks because they're focusing more on the sort of up to 2 million, up to 5 million, up to 10 million projects, which is obviously their bread and butter. But unfortunately, that is not controllable by us as a city deal. That's ultimately down to the contractors and where they bid for the work as well in many instances.
So you don't think it's a lack of support for those companies that could be built for 10 million to come 3 of them together and say we'll deliver it jointly?
I don't think it is, Chair. No, I mean, there's obviously options to do things like that when it's a standalone individual project, but utilising the frameworks, it's very difficult to get those kind of consortia set up. But I think obviously if we were talking about a standalone project, then it's a different conversation.
Okay, Councillor Morgan.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I did put my hand down. I just wanted to, on page 33, when I asked the question to Jonathan about homes as power stations, no jobs be created. Of course, the matrix above it does show that everything there are jobs created in every sort of section. I can't see that on the graph, though. Is that just the graphic, Phil? Because if you look at it, you could look at the graph and think that some haven't created any jobs, but is it a case of just needs to be blown up?
Yeah, so the graph, the graph shows the jobs across the 3 themes that we're delivering, whereas the table shows the 9 programs and projects. But when this is included, I won't waste time and pull it back up, but there is a table above the graph which gives you the totals for each bar. So it does tell you individually then which each project has what jobs in what year they anticipate in delivering those. And then that links back to the table. The graph is just pictorial, really.
Yeah, but I mean, but we should see amber somewhere along the lines, isn't it, on those? Because if you look at the graphic underneath,
Sorry for the additional delivery jobs.
No, I get what you're saying, Councillor. So skills and talent and digital infrastructure do not create jobs per se, right? So that they support the other initiatives to create the jobs. So, but they'll create literally a handful each. So that from that perspective, in terms of the amber for the other ones, so campuses was only approved in December. They literally, this is a report from the end of March.
Right.
So
but the figures there above, though, you see what I'm getting at, Jonathan. There should be amber somewhere along the line there. I can't see that on the graphic. That's only my point.
I think it's because the numbers are so small, like 5 for HAPS already, but as soon as they start generating more jobs, that you could actually see that amber. So yeah, I think. Yeah.
So it is correct what Chair just said. So there are 5 jobs created for HAPS because it's such a, it's probably in there, but you just can't see it just at this time.
Yeah. And then last point from me, if I can, Jonathan. In terms of risk management, there's only so much management of risk you can take, especially with the kind of years that we've had. When we envisaged the city deal, in 2016, 17, or whenever the time was, we never would have known there was a pandemic. We never have known that the construction costs would be escalating to the point in which Richard's probably pulling his hair over school buildings, let alone everything else. And then you've also got a probable recession coming down the line as well. So there's only so much risk you can manage. Isn't it the point? I guess the question I've got is, how are we supposed to deliver everything on the current budgets that we were supposed to 5 years ago with everything that's happened? Is it just not, like, how are we actually doing this?
We are doing it, Chair. So in terms of the arena, just to take an example, the arena was built largely during the pandemic, during the lockdown, during the restrictions. They delivered on time, on budget, or within budget even. Right, so there are examples. The Bay Technology Centre, that was delivered. We're just waiting for the final bottoming out of the financials. But Rich, from our perspective, we think it's on time, on budget, or within budget. So there are examples that are coming through the pipeline where people have delivered. The issue that we got, Chair, is now with construction costs continuing to rise and inflationary costs, inflation is going up at such a higher rate than what we planned. We are doing as much early intervention with all the lead deliverers to make sure that we identify if there's a funding gap. And then, as I said, with the example of Pembroke Marine, they might identify a different source of fund or additional fund from an existing source, or they may have to, what my term would be, process re-engineer what they're going to deliver to make it more affordable, yet they still deliver the same in terms of outcomes and impact, jobs or GVA, wherever it might be. So each project is doing that in turn. But can we deliver what we set out to do? Yes, I believe we can. Are there lots of twists and turns and debates and discussions? Yes, there will be. Will there be delays as a consequence? Yes, there already have been, and there will continue to be, but everything is moving forward. Nobody is coming to us saying we can't afford or we can't do something. There's no showstoppers. So
yeah, because I guess what I'm trying to dig at is you could take the second phase of Eregin, you could take Pentrawl. When we said we were going to spend 100 million on Pentrawl or something like that, we didn't expect wood to go up 6 times during the pandemic, and then inflation and everything else like that. So is it the case that you have to cut out job creation as part of it, or you have to do a little bit less in terms of the spec of the building, or we can't do more in terms of ability to think about the environment as much? What is given as part of this rising building costs at the moment? Because either the profit margins are different for the companies, they're accepting less of a profit margin, something has to give, because there's only this pot of money and it could only go a certain far. So I'm just wondering what's actually happening in that respect.
So what will give is yet to be determined at a portfolio level, but at project by project basis. So things have cost more, yes, but when people develop their business cases, they will always look at, well, what's my terminology, not necessarily government's terminology, but contingencies within it. So they might be standard. Myself and Phil are project managers. We would standard pretty much put 10 to 15% as a standard contingency wherever people are comfortable with the term. That's what you would normally write into these type of business cases. So some of that has taken that slack, if you like, within the business cases. Others are, as I said, process re-engineering, how they're going to do it. Pentrawl is an example. That was one of the biggest procurements we've done and probably will do for a city deal. They capped it with a maximum price. So even if you take the Kingsway development, with Bouygues, there are often fixed term prices put into things to mitigate. So what gives? All of the things that you said, Chair, and more could give. What we are experiencing and what Phil is making sure from our visualization is that, does this change how many jobs are created, the GVA, the inward investment? And what we're being told by all of our partners is no. Current forecasts are still the same. From Rich's perspective, it's still affordable from a financial perspective. From the government's perspective, that there's commitment from stakeholders, whether it's local government or national government, or the primary deliverers of these things. They are all committed to doing the projects in the way that they envisage them, or they'll adapt and go through a change control procedure to make sure that it's approved and everybody is on the same page as to what the changes are, whether that's the impact of the interventions or the fabrication of the buildings or whatever it might be. But there are limited indications right now that we have showstoppers in place, even though we still keep that risk as a red because there's so much uncertainty with it.
Yeah, and this is going to be for future months and years, because obviously we know that with a recession, obviously it's going to impact the private sector, which means that delivery of private sector investment is going to potentially have an impact, but we're not going to be able to see it yet. We're going to have to wait for you guys to come back in a few months to say, okay, there may be some indications, or no, they're still investing. So I guess it's a wait and see on that.
What we've got in place, Chair, is hopefully reporting mechanisms and assurance mechanisms to identify those as early as we can, to have those conversations and to look for solutions. Yeah, I can see Phil's hand as well, Chair.
Yeah, Phil.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to add to that, just to try and close that point off. Really, is that the other thing to just be mindful of is that the budgets were created in 2016-17. The market was obviously fairly buoyant back then. They were also budgets as well, so they weren't firm prices at that point in time either. You mentioned obviously the pandemic. The pandemic obviously had a negative impact initially on construction costs. So and then the actual timeline of when we saw the approval of many of our schemes sort of towards the second half, if you like, of the pandemic, the kind of more accurate costings have been done at times where the market has been closer to where it is now than what it potentially would have been if it had been a year or two earlier. Not to try and complicate things, but the budget was done at a buoyant time in the market. And additional to that, obviously, we saw a drop in prices before we saw them start rising again. So all those factors have I think, helped us as well in remaining pretty much on our overall forecasted budget.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Richard, do you want to come in for page 34, financial management section?
Yes, I can. Thanks, Chair. So yes, so this is the Q4 outturn position. I believe it was sent as an addendum, so some people might have it outside of the reports pack as well. And essentially, it's probably beneficial if I explain to the new members the sort of the financial structure for a moment, so because it'll be easier for me to apply the quarterly monitoring to it. So essentially, the way in which the City Deal funding flow works is that we get an annual grant from Welsh Government on behalf of UK and Welsh Government. And this is over a 15-year period. It's slightly complicated because UK Government are going to give us their proportion of funding over 10 years. But Welsh Government are going to continue to support the grant award over 15 years. So in total, the grant is still going to be drawn down over 15 years, but it will be front loaded to year 10, which is the UK Gov element of it. At present, we're in year 5 of the City Deal, and we've received 4 years worth of funding to date. And what we will, we'd be hopeful that funding for this financial year will come in towards the latter end of the calendar year, when it tends to come in the main. There was a slight delay last year due to, I think, negotiations over the profile term with Welsh Government.
Can you remind members how much we get from the UK and Welsh Government each year, please?
Yeah, so in total, over the 15-year period, we'll get 241 million of capital only grant. At the moment, this works out at about 23 million pounds per year up until year 10, and then it fizzes out for just a few million then to year 15, which is just the Welsh Government only proportion of it. So that has benefited the region with everything going up and costs going up. It has benefited because it essentially means that we as a City Deal are going to get our hands on more money than we thought, which means we need to borrow less to support the funding gap, which was created by us essentially delivering all projects by year 10, but the money or the grant coming into the deal up until year 15. So it's the UK Government element has had a significant impact there, and hopefully negotiations with Welsh Government can happen going forward to see if they can match that term.
And for new members, how much is each council contributing to this as well?
Right, so that's just the grant award. So in total, then that's matched with 396 million pounds of the public sector investment. We don't have it split down per local authority because it's not just the local authorities that are involved with it. There's health boards involved and universities. But in the main, it's about 396 million. And then if you those two together come to about 600 million, which is then matched with the private sector, 600 million. This is in rough terms, to the 1.2 billion headline figure. So that's how it's constructed. The City Deal's constructed financially.
But from memory, each council are putting in around about 30-40 million. That's fair guess, is that?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah. It is.
Chair, can I interrupt there for a minute?
Yes, please go ahead.
Right. So it's over 10 years for the UK Government.
It is.
And that for 10 years would be roughly 23 million a year. How much would it be for the Welsh Government then from year 10 to year 15?
That's a good question. 2 seconds. It would probably be around.
You're talking about 2 million a year, I think, isn't it?
It's about 2 million a year in rough terms. It's about £2-3 million a year to take it to year 15.
Right. Okay. Now
I haven't got the exact figure, but it'd be, I off the top of my head, it's about 20 million.
Yeah, I know that Swansea's borrowed 200 million currently, but that not all of that's a city deal. Some of that is for schools and that type of thing. So about 140 million pound is for the city deal, you know, projects within the city deal. So given that, you say then that the councils and health board are somewhere in the region of 600 million.
That's including the city deal grant as well. So it's about 396 million is the headline figure that we work to on that.
So 390 million for local authorities.
It is, yes. Yes.
And then the other 210 million is from the health boards.
It would be and universities, and I can give you the exact figures. That would be further down in the report. I can touch upon the more specific figures for you down in the report, because they're as quote. The figures I've just quoted are the headline figures. The actual forecasted is
just the headline figures. I want a
yeah,
bit more.
It'd be universities, health boards, and other public sector bodies as well contributing towards it. Other partners.
Rich, when we first started this, we had a headline breakdown. Maybe we can do a revised one for the new members and the new committee, so people understand where the flow of money is coming and going.
Okay, no problem.
So is that possible for the next meeting?
It is.
One final question. That's all.
Carry on, Chris.
If we have a total 600 million and the other to make up the 1.3 billion is going to be private sector, where is that private sector money coming from?
It comes in the form of contribution or direct financial contribution. It comes in a variety of forms specific to each project. Or it comes down in the form of generated investment, as well as on the back of the public sector being used as a catalyst. So I'll give you an example, using Swansea as an example, the Swansea waterfront. In your example, you've been at, for that waterfront project, you've been allocated £50 million worth of city deal funding. And then you've contributed, I believe, £86 million worth of council funding. And then the private sector, you'll be bringing in, I think it's equivalent to about 25 million for the hotel, 1 million for the arena operator, and investment into the Kingsway then, direct investment into the Kingsway then as well. And the innovation matrix, there'll be a direct investment into there from
and that's from the private sector.
And that's all from the private sector, yes. And when you multiply that up, you know, Pentrowell's got a hotel in there as well. When you add a Pembroke Dock Marine, that's a private, treated as a private sector organisation as a trust. They've got, what have they got, 16 million invested. So it comes in all shapes and forms. The digital project, okay, that's not direct financial investment, but they're having heavy investment working with Welsh Government to boost infrastructure in our region. They'll accommodate that because the digital programme is a catalyst for that and supporting that. So it when you add it all together, it adds up to a sizable sum, to about over £500 million.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help, Councillor?
Yeah. I'll go through all the papers and I'll probably have better questions for him in December or in September. Or...
That's good. That's good. Jonathan, do you want to come in?
If I can, Chair, just to back some of the things that Rich said. So there's lots of ways that the inward investment from private sector, but public sector as well comes in. Some of it is up front, some of it's down the line, some of it's through the bills, some of it's through the operation. But if you take Pembroke Dock Marine, a lot of the private sector funding was secured up front. Whereas some of the others might come behind the building, and it could be through partnerships, tenancy, R&D, innovation, a whole host of things, operators, as we said. But I guess the key thing to point out is a lot of the inward investment is around the supply chain for homes as power stations. And just to make sure that we point that out. And again, there's an investment fund that is yet to be distributed to help support the development of the supply chain around renewable technologies in the homes. So, so all of that is on our radar, and we are making sure that we because this is a red risk of ours, one of our mitigations is to review that and make sure that we identify where the funding is coming from at the earliest point, and again we communicate that to all of our stakeholders. So you're asking the right question, Councillor.
Can I ask the question then? If we are using, or you were saying the procurement is part of the private sector finance, in what way is that the procurement being used? Is it the purchase locally, or is it the service locally, or is it a combined both services and procurement of materials or whatever? Because if that is the case, that's going to be like the building, the people that build the construction employees will be a one-off. That will not be an ongoing issue. So is the procurement in a similar manner? Thank you.
Yes and no. So I'm going to try and answer this question, and Rich and Phil can add to what I'm saying. So the reason I say yes and no is because if a private sector company invests and put money into building a building or partially building a building, then that would come under the procurement side of things. So they are investing. The jobs created as a consequence, as you said, Councillor, there could be construction jobs, which may be a one-off. It could be have a more sustainable longer term benefits because people could be employed in a longer term within the region. But the jobs created, where we've identified them as construction jobs, and then the more after construction jobs created as a consequence of operation, the impact associated with the infrastructure, etc. So there's that aspect of things. And there was another point I was going to raise. You said about procurement. I can't think what the other point was.
Yeah, the procurement is because what I'm concerned is that we're double counting some of the jobs, or we are double counting the way in which procurement is used. Say, for instance, we are procuring a ton of concrete, for want of a better term. I can't think of any of that. Yeah. And obviously, the firm we buy it off might be in Swansea, might be in Carmarthen, or what have you. So that's part of the procurement policy. Is that used as part of the, if you like, the overall job matrix, or is then, if whenever that concrete's delivered and somebody might be working there and might be working there for a long time, is that considered to be part of the procurement? Do we use that as part of a procurement pattern that we go along and, it's very difficult, I know now, to get long-term procurement deals because of the costs and the inflation. So that's what I'm asking, worrying, concerned about, is how we are doing that and how the jobs are equated to procurement.
Do you want me to answer, John?
Yeah, if you can, on the jobs.
Yeah. So just to allay any fears in double counting, the only construction jobs that we've counted have been those not physically on site. So if someone works in a concrete batching plant, that isn't counted as a job attributable to City Deal, because they would have been working there prior to City Deal, using your example of a concrete plant. So take the arena for argument's sake. The individuals that worked on the physical arena site, their employment was aggregated up to full-time equivalents. And those are the only jobs that were included within our targets. In relation to the operational jobs, which are the jobs created as an outcome of the physical builds, so we've got still some work to do on those, but essentially they are jobs that are created either in the arena or for the company that's running the arena, taking that example, as within Swansea, or they are potentially jobs within the vicinity, but they've been created as a direct result. So for argument's sake, if we could, and it would be if we could evidence and audit it, for argument's sake, if the Premier Inn in the Kingsway took on another 10 staff as a result of additional bookings because of the footfall coming to Swansea because of the arena, then we would be able to include those, but it would only be if we could confirm that they were as a direct result of that intervention.
Because Ambassador Theatre Group actually employ full-time in the arena, about 26 people.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you've got the cafe alongside it, and then you've got a couple of pop-up cafes, which arguably could be another 50, 60 people, I don't know, spread over 7 days. But to take a Reading down in Carmarthen, you've had S4C have actually gone there, and you've also said there's a hotel in there. So the jobs total would be the whole of the concept, including the hotel, plus and on the procurement side of that, the people working on it would also be included as part of the jobs total.
The delivery jobs, if they were building the physical asset, yes. But if they worked for a local supplier, then no, we haven't included those.
Right, okay, thank you very much.
That's
Thank
brilliant.
you.
Thank you, Al.
Sure. If I could add, the bit, Councillor, that I escaped my mind a few minutes ago was an example with digital infrastructure. So digital infrastructure will do procurements, and what that will utilise is public sector funds, national and local public sector funds, to stimulate private sector investment into the region. So without that stimulation of public sector funds, it might not happen, or it may happen, but it might take longer. It may happen, but it might be less of. There's no certainty with it. So
I understand that, you know, the physical infrastructure for us to lay cables and what have you,
exactly,
or what have you. Yeah, I understand that, because we you know, that is an enabling task for future generation and future employment. It's very similar to if we build a power station for somebody else to operate, then it brings down the cost of the electricity. I understand that, and that's what I was trying to get on with about procurement. Are we procuring in that manner? If we are, there is some sense in that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawley. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry to be a nuisance and interrupt.
Okay.
Very interesting discussions here today, a lot of which I didn't know about. But I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave you. I've got to pick my wife up from Langwell. She's under treatment there. So look forward to the next meeting. I'm sure these young ladies will give me a diary dates to put in. You've got my emails and stuff, haven't you? Okay, thank you very much for all of you. Pleasure to meet you. Look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much indeed. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Hall, and best wishes to your wife. Cynghorwyr Sparks.
Diolch, Chair. Just one point about the hotel. I don't think there's a hotel in Elegant. I think we're meant in Pentrelaw, is it, on the thing? Just to kind of clarify so that there's no record.
It is correct.
It's phase 3, I think, of Pentrelaw, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify.
Okay, Pawb yn hapus. We've really gone through the matrix. Is there anything, Jonathan, that you really want to, because obviously this is our first meeting, we're going to have plenty of opportunities now.
Yeah, there's a lot of information reports. Richard, are you finished for the financials, Rich? Is there anything else?
I haven't, to be honest with you. I don't know if you just want me to quickly go through the report. I was just trying to lay the foundations for the wider city deal before I went into the report, to be honest, but I can quickly summarise it if you're content, Chair.
Yeah, if you want to just do a quick summary, that'd be good.
Okay, look, taking the whole city deal into account, what we've had to do financially is structure it into two elements: the joint committee budget and the portfolio investment fund. The joint committee budget is essentially the operational costs for supporting and running the city deal. The portfolio investment fund is essentially the 241 million grant and other investment into the region. The joint committee budget as of the end of the financial year, we were looking at about 5,600,000, which is well under budget, and there's some narrative to support individual aspects of the joint committee within the report, which I'll leave you peruse at your own accord. I'm happy to take any questions at a later date. Moving on to the portfolio investment fund, just to give you some detail around that. So the last business case was approved in December. That meant for the first time, well, certainly since I've been working on the city deal, we had an approved budget. So the approved budget for all the projects came to about 4 billion, 1,240 million. What we've done in Q3 then is so we could take a stock check of where we are across all the projects. We revised the budgets to a more accurate and up-to-date figure because, as you can appreciate, there's about 2 years gap between the first one being approved and the last one. And that was demonstrating a very minor overinvestment of about 1 million as of Q3. So it came in at 1,241 million. What I have tried to do throughout the report is taking feedback from you at previous joint scrutiny committees, is I've tried to split it down to project level as far as I can, where I can. So I hope that you'll see that whilst I have put higher level figures in there to the committee, the joint committee, I've tried to break it down as far as possible to give you that detail to scrutinise. To go into actual figures, the actual outturn position as of Q4, we were demonstrating a very marginal underinvestment by about £2 million. But as John explained earlier on, a lot of this information is based on a 15-year profile and is heavily forecasted. It will go up and down going forward, and any significant changes will be highlighted in this report and will be referenced through the change management strategy and managed and mitigated through that. So yes, so there's a very minor underinvestment. What we've tried to do as well is to take on board some of your comments from previous, is to look at it from an annual snapshot. This just gives us a 1 year outlook. As of last year, we were demonstrating investment at the year end of about 30 million. This was a bit lower than we would have hoped, but when we reprofiled the city deal back in January, essentially what we're saying is, I'm going back to old ground, what we covered is at this moment in time that the investment, despite all the pandemic and other, is not looking to decrease significantly. It's just a timing effect from the delay of procurements and delay of resources and other reasons behind it, and it'll slip into future years and catch itself up in the latter part of the delivery profile on that. I alluded to the capital and revenue split earlier on, so we manage that because the city deal is an all capital grant. At the moment, we're looking at about 5% of the 1.24 billion required is a revenue cost, and partners and authorities will manage that resource as they see fit, utilising policies and procedures that they have to them, or just simply contributing through revenue resource where applicable.
Quickly on that, Rich, the 5% top slicing for revenue, mainly for the PMO, is that being funded using the interest that we are getting from the banks in terms of the preloaded investment? And if not, is that interest going into the projects instead?
Okay, so yeah, to go back to that, the way in which that joint committee budget is funded, you've got £50,000 per partner across the 8 partners. You've got the 1.5% top slice, and then you've got a small amount of interest. Yeah, you've got a small amount of interest in there as well. So the 1.5% top slice is a direct input into the operational side from the grant awarded. And what we will look to do is this is a pivotal year for us because we'll need to front load the top slice, and authorities will be working with all authorities in order to do this to support the operational side. As of the interest, what the joint committee agreed was that the interest will be passported back to projects apportioned on the original heads of terms figures. So essentially, I apportion all the, I think it was like 38,000 last year, back to the projects themselves, and it's up to the projects how they utilise that funding. They might put it towards the revenue, they might offset the borrowing that they've got for it. I wouldn't get involved in that at the portfolio level.
Okay.
All I ensure is that gets passported back to the projects themselves, and that's happened now for 3 years now. And to give you an example, we've probably accrued about £90,000 over the last 3 years. It's gone back to the projects for that as a cumulative. So yeah, so there's on page 8 of the addendum, there's a private and public sector breakdown. We're actually going to revise this to make it more for it to present a bit better and for it to make a bit more sense, because this was an historic sort of table that was sufficient when we were trying to get the projects into delivery. Now they're all in delivery. We're looking to review this now this next quarter going forward. There is as you can see that the majority of public sector is committed. There is a small majority of private sector committed. There has been questions over it. However, that we're currently on target to meet the private sector inward investment. And even when the deal was conceived back in 2017, the private sector was always going to come a bit later than the public sector, because the public sector was the catalyst to drive the inward investment. And that's still the case. All we found is because of COVID and other reasons, this is just delayed slightly in the delivery profile. And I think we're looking up to year 10 now to fully deliver the portfolio. So there's nothing of concern there. So that's a quick snapshot of the joint committee and the portfolio investment fund. I'm happy to take any questions on any of that.
Members, any questions? No, can't see any. Oh, thank you very much, Richard. John, do you want to come back to finish your part?
Yeah, Chair, I'm conscious of time, and there's a lot more information in the pack, particularly around the quarterly and monitoring highlight reports. I think given the time, there's no point in necessarily going through everything in that report for the quarterly monitoring. We can provide a summary of highlights there's a lot of information there, but if you'd like, we can provide a summary of bullet point highlights to the board members.
I'm just thinking it's less so in terms of time, but more so in terms of just overwhelming new members. It takes a while to get your head around some of these things. We've talked in detail about a number of these things. So unless there's anything absolutely urgent you want to draw members' attention to.
The good thing about the dashboards is that starts bringing to the fore the more pressing things that we want to highlight, which we've already done. But I guess it's the offer that we've provided both new leaders and new officers to Joint Scrutiny Committee members. If you would like to have a further briefing session collectively or individually, we from the PMO can help with that, just to run through some of the information, what the projects are, etc. So if there's any follow-up, Chair, for any member of the committee, we're happy to do that.
Right, okay. I think we get slightly going into agenda item 6 now. So in terms of agenda item 5, I think we'll close that there unless there's any other items. Can I also welcome Councillor Yelland? I believe he's come in during this meeting, so just welcome him to the committee as well.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have been here. You did miss me at the beginning, but we got there.
Fantastic, Chris, welcome. So yeah, in terms of agenda item 6 then, the Joint Committee provision of documentation. So this it talks a little bit about what Jonathan was saying in regard to this dashboard. Speaking to members prior to this meeting, I think there's both an appetite to have the information that we had previously, but also wanted to look at the dashboard as well and to see what benefits it could be given. So can I suggest that rather than taking a formal decision now, that John, me and you kind of liaise with officers and we'll talk about the dashboard. We'll give kind of some drafts to members and we'll discuss that in the next meeting.
Yeah, of course. The paper that Phil was going to cover, Chair, is what's gone to Joint Committee, and they have approved that level of detail to go to Joint Committee. And as a kind of standard practice, that's what comes across to Joint Scrutiny Committee. So I do think it's worth Phil just summarising what those things are. It's pretty much what we've covered today in the meeting anyway. But if we just highlight what those things are, but we can, this is an evolving process. Anything that we have to build on what we have, we welcome that feedback in addition. So of course, we can do that as well. as a follow-up.
I think unless Mike Shaw was to shout at me or anything now, rather than taking a formal decision now on whether to accept that form of documentation, I think we need a separate meeting to discuss that. Is all members in approval of that? Mike, any legal advice?
Yes, sir. That's fine. That's fine, sir.
That's fine. There we are. Okay, so if it was an agreement to that, we'll park that issue. In terms of the forward work programme as well, 2022 to 2023, this is agenda item 7. I believe there's an appetite from members to have a separate meeting to really kind of develop this forward work programme. So we're going to have a separate forward work programme meeting. Is everyone happy for that? Can I have a proposer?
Yeah, I propose.
Councillor Holly proposed. Councillor John Curtis, yeah, second. Everyone in agreement? Could just have a show of hands. No, I wouldn't have this. Well, just take against and abstentions just in case. Anyone against that proposal? Anyone want to abstain? No. Okay, there we are. Thank you very much for your attendance for the first meeting of the Joint Scrutiny Committee in this term. I don't have any urgent items to take under agenda item 8, so I just want to thank you, and I hope to see you at the next meeting. Thank you very much. Take on vote.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Bye all.